Researchers' bombshell new findings about a strange rock formation in Turkey could prove that Noah's Ark is real. So they can actually map out the shape of what they think is the boat, which means they can measure the size of the boat.
The mountains of eastern Turkey hide something that has confused researchers for more than 60 years. Buried near the Durupınar Site is a massive ship-shaped formation, so large that some investigators believe it could match the dimensions described in the biblical story of Noah's Ark. But this mystery just took a dramatic turn. New ground-penetrating radar scans and soil analysis have reportedly revealed strange, right-angled structures deep beneath the surface. Structures that some researchers argue should not exist if this formation is nothing more than natural rock. So, what are they really looking at? Is this one of the greatest archaeological discoveries ever made, or just another example of nature creating an illusion so convincing that it fools the human mind? And if this is only a geological formation, then why does it appear so unnervingly engineered? Today we're diving deep into a mystery that has sparked decades of debate, divided scientists, fascinated believers, and generated headlines around the world. But before we uncover what the latest scans revealed, take a moment to subscribe. Because the deeper this story goes, the stranger it becomes. What's hiding beneath this mountainside isn't just rock. It's a scientific controversy, a historical mystery, and for some people, possible evidence connected to one of the most famous stories ever written. To understand why researchers are still arguing about this site today, we need to travel back to the exact moment the mystery first entered the public spotlight. Because the story of the Durupınar Formation didn't begin with archaeologists, viral TikToks, or YouTube treasure hunters. It began with a Turkish military officer flying over one of the most remote mountain regions on Earth. High in eastern Turkey, near Mount Ararat, Captain İlhan Durupınar was helping map the rugged landscape after heavy rains and earthquakes exposed unusual formations across the terrain. Then something caught his attention. Resting against the mountainside was a giant shape that did not appear random at all. From the air, it looked remarkably like the outline of a ship buried in the earth. Something about the formation immediately stood out. Lying across the mountainside was an enormous shape that seemed far too deliberate to be ignored. From above, it resembled the outline of a gigantic vessel, partially buried beneath the earth. And this wasn't a small feature being exaggerated through grainy photographs or wishful thinking. The structure measured approximately 538 feet in length. That figure caught attention almost instantly because the Book of Genesis describes Noah's Ark as being 300 royal Egyptian cubits long. When scholars converted that ancient measurement into modern units, the result came remarkably close to the dimensions of the Durupınar Formation. At that moment, the discovery transformed from an unusual geological feature into an international mystery. Put yourself in the position of someone seeing those aerial images for the first time during the 1950s. A massive boat-shaped outline, resting near a region long associated with traditions surrounding Noah's Ark. Wouldn't you start asking questions? Wouldn't you wonder whether history had left behind something extraordinary? As the years passed, interest only grew stronger. During the 1970s and 1980s, the site attracted explorers, researchers, filmmakers, and treasure hunters from around the world. Some claimed to have detected symmetrical features beneath the ground. Others reported finding what they believed were petrified timbers, anchor stones, or traces of man-made construction. Photographs circulated widely. Books explored the possibility. Tour groups arrived eager to witness the mystery firsthand. For many people, the site represented much more than archaeology. It appeared to be tangible evidence supporting one of humanity's most enduring stories. Then the scientific community stepped in. As geologists examined the formation more closely, a very different explanation began to emerge. By the 1990s, several peer-reviewed studies concluded that the Durupınar Formation was likely a completely natural geological structure. Researchers classified it as a doubly plunging syncline, a formation created when layers of sediment are bent and shaped over long periods through tectonic pressure, erosion, and mudflow activity. In other words, nature itself may have sculpted something that merely looked artificial. The conclusion was a major setback for those hoping the site contained the remains of an ancient vessel. By 1996, many scientists considered the debate essentially over. No ark, no preserved ship, no archaeological miracle, just a geological formation capable of fooling the human eye. But that conclusion introduces an uncomfortable possibility. How often do people see patterns that aren't really there? We find faces in clouds, we recognize shapes in shadows, and perhaps, under the right circumstances, we can even convince ourselves that a mountain resembles a giant ship. So what exactly is the Durupınar Formation? Could it be evidence connected to the story of Noah's Ark? Or is it simply another example of the human mind searching for meaning in randomness? For a while, the scientific world appeared to move on. Public interest faded. Skeptics felt vindicated. Yet one problem never truly disappeared. The formation itself remained. Its unusual dimensions remained. And every few years, fresh claims would pull the mystery back into public discussion, which raises an important question. If the case was supposedly settled decades ago, why did an international team return to the site in 2026, carrying sophisticated radar systems, forensic testing equipment, and advanced scanning technology? The answer lies in what happened next, because according to the researchers involved, modern technology may have revealed something that earlier investigations simply could not see. For years, the Durupınar Formation existed in a strange middle ground. Believers continued defending it. Critics continued dismissing it. Most people forgot it was even there. But behind the scenes, a new collaboration between Turkish and American researchers was quietly taking shape. Their approach was simple. Instead of debating what appeared on the surface, they wanted to examine what lay beneath it. That decision changed everything. The team deployed advanced three-dimensional ground-penetrating radar, commonly known as GPR. While the technology sounds complex, the basic concept is surprisingly straightforward. Imagine shouting into a dark cave. If the space is solid, the sound returns one way. If hidden chambers, tunnels, or voids exist beyond the wall, the echo behaves differently. Ground-penetrating radar operates on a similar principle. Electromagnetic signals are transmitted into the ground, and the returning reflections help researchers map what lies below the surface. In most natural formations, the resulting images tend to be chaotic. Fractures, irregular layers, curved structures, and random sediment patterns dominate the scans. Nature rarely organizes itself with precision. Yet according to the research team's findings, the Durupınar scans appeared to reveal something unexpected. The radar images reportedly showed extended linear features, sharp angles, and several geometric anomalies buried nearly 20 feet underground. One particularly intriguing feature was what researchers described as a central passage running roughly 234 feet through the heart of the formation. Rather than displaying completely random geological patterns, some of the scanned features appeared aligned and parallel. And that's where the debate became even more complicated. If the formation is entirely natural, Why do some underground features appear so straight? Why do certain sections seem divided into separate compartments? Why do some radar reflections resemble enclosed spaces instead of ordinary sediment layers? The research team argued that these were not the patterns they expected to encounter in a simple geological fold. Some investigators even suggested that portions of the scans resembled structural layouts, not proof, not confirmation, but certainly unusual enough to reignite worldwide interest. Almost overnight, the story exploded across the internet. Videos of the scans spread rapidly online. Discussion forums dedicated to biblical archaeology became flooded with new theories. Supporters hailed the findings as a potential breakthrough. Critics accused researchers of interpreting ambiguous data through the lens of belief. And perhaps the most fascinating part is that both sides seem to present reasonable arguments, because humans possess a remarkable ability to construct meaning from incomplete information. Give us a blurry image, a strange radar scan, or a mysterious pattern, and our minds immediately begin filling in the missing pieces. We humans have a remarkable tendency to find patterns where we want them to exist. Give us a blurry radar image, and suddenly we start seeing hallways, chambers, decks, or the remains of some enormous lost structure. The same thing happens in archaeology, and even in investigations involving unexplained aerial phenomena. But there is another side to that argument. Ground-penetrating radar isn't some imaginary technology built on speculation. It has helped researchers uncover hidden cities, forgotten tombs, buried tunnels, and ancient ruins across the world. This is a legitimate scientific tool with a proven track record. So imagine standing in front of the data yourself. If a scan revealed long, straight features cutting through the center of a mountainside, what conclusion would you reach? Would you assume those lines point to something constructed? Or would you trust the geological explanation proposed decades earlier? And then there's another: can natural geological processes really produce corridor-like shapes, geometric patterns, and symmetrical features on this scale? Many geologists would answer yes, without hesitation. Yet even some critics acknowledge that the images are unusual enough to justify a closer investigation. But the radar scans weren't the most surprising part of this story. Not even close. According to the research team, the real shock came when they stopped looking at the shapes and started examining the soil itself. And what they claim to have discovered may represent the closest thing to physical evidence the site has produced so far. Because if a gigantic wooden vessel once rested here and later vanished, what traces would it leave behind? The answer brings us to one of the most fascinating chapters of the mystery: the chemical ghost. As strange as it sounds, even a structure that completely disappears can leave behind a signature. And some researchers believe that signature may still exist at the Durupınar Site. Up until this point, most of the debate revolved around appearances: the boat-shaped outline, the underground patterns, the geometric features revealed by radar. But appearances can be deceptive. Human beings see faces in clouds and animals in rock formations. Our brains are wired to create meaning from shapes. So investigators changed the question entirely. Instead of asking what the formation looked like, they asked what evidence it might have left behind. Because realistically, nobody expects an ancient wooden ark to survive thousands of years underground. Exposure to moisture, earthquakes, freezing temperatures, bacteria, and natural decay would eventually destroy any wooden structure. The wood itself would be gone, but the environmental traces might remain. Even after organic materials disappear, they can alter the chemistry of the surrounding soil for centuries. That possibility shifted the entire investigation. Rather than searching for giant wooden beams or preserved fragments, researchers reportedly focused on soil chemistry, mineral composition, microscopic organic residues, and subtle changes invisible to the naked eye. The approach resembled a forensic investigation more than a traditional archaeological excavation. According to published findings, investigators collected 88 soil samples from locations both inside and outside the formation. The results immediately attracted attention. Researchers reported that soil within the outline contained significantly higher concentrations of organic material than surrounding areas. Potassium levels appeared elevated. pH values differed noticeably from nearby control samples. Suddenly, the discussion became far more complicated. Higher concentrations of organic matter often develop when biological material breaks down over long periods of time. Wood, vegetation, microorganisms, and animal remains can all gradually transform the chemistry of the soil around them. Because of this, some researchers began describing the anomaly as a chemical ghost, not the remains of the Ark itself, but a possible environmental footprint left behind by something large that once occupied the area. Think of it like arriving at a crime scene long after the evidence has disappeared. The object is gone, but its presence is still recorded in the environment. Supporters of the Ark theory quickly embraced the findings. They argued that a massive wooden vessel carrying animals and organic materials could potentially leave exactly this type of chemical signature after thousands of years. What made the results even more intriguing was the claim that these chemical differences appeared primarily inside the boat-shaped boundary rather than being distributed randomly across the mountain. Naturally, skeptics weren't convinced. Geologists point out that unusual soil chemistry does not automatically indicate the presence of an ancient ship. Natural landforms can collect water differently, trap organic debris, and concentrate minerals over long periods without any involvement from human construction. And that's what makes this debate so fascinating. The dimensions are unusual. The radar data is unusual. The soil chemistry is unusual. Yet none of those findings provide definitive proof, at least not yet, which leaves one enormous question hanging over the entire mountain. Is the Durupınar Formation concealing the remains of an ancient vessel? Or are we witnessing one of the most convincing geological illusions ever discovered? To answer that question, we need to understand just how deceptive nature can be. Because the Durupınar Formation may be one of geology's greatest magicians. Viewed from above, it appears to tell one story. Examined scientifically, it may tell another. This is where the debate becomes especially intense. A shape that looks engineered from the sky can still be the result of completely natural forces acting over immense spans of time. And this is where the Ark hypothesis encounters one of its strongest challenges. Many geologists explain the formation as something known as a doubly plunging syncline. In simple terms, it's a natural geological structure created when layers of rock bend downward into a long oval shape. Over millions of years, tectonic pressure slowly compresses sedimentary layers, producing formations that can appear surprisingly organized. Viewed from a distance, especially from the air, those formations can resemble something intentionally designed. But according to this explanation, there is no architecture involved, no ancient blueprint, no buried vessel, only the slow and relentless forces that shape our planet. The geological explanation extends even further. A syncline can function like a natural basin. Rainwater flows into it. Organic material accumulates. Leaves, vegetation, and decaying organisms become trapped and gradually break down. Over time, this process alters the soil's chemistry. Organic concentrations increase, mineral levels shift, pH values change. The result can create exactly the kinds of anomalies that some researchers find so intriguing. And this is where skeptics challenge the idea of a chemical ghost left by a vanished ark. Their argument is straightforward. There's no need to invoke an ancient wooden ship when natural geological processes can produce similar results. According to this view, the formation has simply acted as a collection point for organic material over thousands of years, quietly creating the chemical signature observed today. No ship required. According to skeptics, no ancient vessel is needed to explain what researchers are seeing today. All you need is enough time. Given thousands of years, gravity, water, erosion, and natural sediment movement can produce effects that appear surprisingly unusual. From this perspective, the Durupınar Formation isn't evidence of a lost ship at all. It's simply nature following its own rules. But this is exactly where the debate becomes impossible to ignore. Researchers associated with the Noah's Ark investigation argue that the evidence goes beyond what would normally be expected from a natural geological process. Their attention keeps returning to one particular detail: the soil data. After collecting and analyzing 88 samples from both inside and outside the formation, investigators reported a consistent pattern. The differences weren't subtle. In some areas, organic content measured nearly 3 times higher than surrounding locations. Chemical variations appeared repeatedly across sections that seemed to follow the shape of the formation itself. To supporters of the Ark hypothesis, that doesn't look like random background variation. It looks like a trace, a lingering signature left behind by something that once occupied the site. And that's where the mystery splits into 2 completely different interpretations. One group sees a textbook geological formation behaving exactly as expected after millions of years of natural processes. The other sees evidence suggesting that something structured may once have existed there, leaving behind a detectable imprint long after it disappeared. Neither side is looking at different data. They're looking at the same information and arriving at entirely different conclusions. And perhaps that's what makes this mystery so fascinating. Imagine you're examining the radar images yourself. Straight lines appear beneath the mountain. Geometric patterns seem to emerge from the scans. Would you immediately trust the established geological explanation? Or would you start wondering whether those features point to something constructed long ago? An even more unsettling possibility remains. What if nature is simply far better at creating convincing patterns than humans are at interpreting them? That question sits at the heart of the entire Durupınar controversy. On one side are researchers treating the site almost like a forensic investigation, attempting to reconstruct what may be hidden beneath the surface. On the other are geologists reminding everyone that the Earth has spent millions of years creating shapes capable of fooling even experienced observers. So who has the stronger case? That's the question keeping this debate alive, decade after decade. Both explanations can account for much of the available evidence. Yet each leads to a radically different understanding of what the formation truly represents. And just when the discussion seems to have reached its limit, another question emerges. A question that may eventually determine whether this mystery is solved once and for all. What piece of evidence could finally settle the argument? The answer may surprise you, because the missing piece isn't another radar scan, it isn't another soil sample, and it isn't even a fragment of ancient wood. It's permission. After decades of research, many investigators are no longer debating what the existing data shows. They're debating what they're allowed to test next. Radar surveys have revealed features some researchers describe as structured. Soil analyses have identified unusual concentrations of organic material, elevated potassium levels, and measurable chemical differences across the site. The data appears intriguing, yet none of it provides a definitive answer. And that's where the challenge begins. Many scientists continue to argue that every one of these anomalies can still be explained through natural geological processes. Their explanation returns once again to the doubly plunging syncline model. According to this view, the formation acts as a natural basin. Over time, it collects water, sediment, plant material, and organic debris. As those materials accumulate and decompose, they gradually alter the surrounding soil chemistry. The result can resemble exactly the kind of anomalies researchers have identified, which creates an uncomfortable question. Are these chemical signatures evidence of something that was built, or simply evidence of something that was naturally buried? At this point, the investigation has reached a limit. Radar technology can identify shapes and density changes, but it cannot conclusively determine what created them. Soil chemistry can reveal environmental differences, but it cannot identify their exact source. The available tools can describe the mystery. They cannot solve it. That's why attention has increasingly shifted toward one final possibility: core drilling. Unlike radar imaging or surface analysis, core drilling would allow researchers to retrieve physical material directly from deep within the formation, layer by layer, sample by sample, actual evidence instead of interpretations. If anything unusual exists beneath the site, this method could reveal it. But science isn't the only factor involved. Any drilling operation would require approval from Turkish authorities, environmental agencies, and cultural heritage organizations. At the moment, that approval has not been granted, and until it is, the mystery remains frozen in place. Which brings us to the central question: who do you trust? The teams interpreting the site through forensic-style analysis, or the geologists who argue that nature is responsible for every feature being observed? If you were standing at the formation yourself, what would convince you first? The pattern or the process? And if drilling eventually takes place, what do you think researchers will find? Ancient timber hidden beneath the mountain, or ordinary rock arranged into one of the most convincing natural illusions ever discovered? Right now, everything depends on that unanswered question. Whatever lies roughly 20 feet beneath the surface could finally resolve the debate, or it could make the controversy even bigger than it is today. So, what do you think is really buried beneath the Durupınar Formation? A remarkable geological coincidence, or the remains of something far older and far more significant? The mystery remains unsolved. Share your thoughts in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this investigation into Noah's Ark theories, archaeological enigmas, and hidden chapters of history, don't forget to like the video and subscribe for more deep dives into the world's greatest mysteries.